Arsenal will enter the FA Cup not wearing what they usually do. And that's quite an interesting story. And we're going to talk about that and Arsenal's first signing of January in today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk back again, but with you guys for another episode of what is indeed the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. And I've actually got a transfer to talk about this morning. It might not be the one I know the majority of you will be clamoring for and excited about, but it is a transfer. And there's also potential news that goes on from that regarding a potential signing as well. So, yes, there is transfer news to talk about, believe it or not. We've got to we've got some news to discuss, which is great, and I'm very much looking forward to discussing that with you all. But let's not waste any time and jump straight into the chat box. Good morning to those of you joining us live this morning. We've got Spearmint, we've got Arasilki and Rich, we've got Brian and Errol. Good morning to Nigel and Matt. We've got Cheech, we've got Spearmint and Amesy and Martin. Good morning to Maximius and Mike. We've got Martin and Manny. Good morning to Carl. Julian, thank you so much, all of you, for tuning in. As always, if you could drop a like on the video, help us to reach 1K every day. Yesterday, we reached 1,000 likes on the show before we even hit lunchtime. Incredible. You know, sometimes I think I do underestimate this community. I really do. You know, this world can be so frustrating, annoying, irritating, and just poking you, it feels like sometimes. But sometimes you actually get a reminder of just how genuinely brilliant people are. And the fact that we reached 1,000 likes before lunch yesterday was absolutely crazy. So let's see if we can do it again. 1,000 likes before lunch would be brilliant, but we're trying to reach 1,000 likes on the show every single day throughout the whole of this new year, and we'll see how far we can go on the show. I guess the other challenge is that I started this late, and that's my fault, and I apologize for that. So the first 3 shows of the year, I didn't say anything about it because I completely forgot we were going to do it. So if you want to go back to those first 3 shows and make sure that they've got a like on them so we can get them up to a K as well, just so we can keep things, my obsession with trying to keep things uniform is quite strong. So maybe indeed that's what you want to do if you're like me. I want to keep the likes up. But let's jump into today's stories, shall we? I think we should jump into today's episode of and all of our potential stories that we need to discuss today, because there is quite a lot that we actually need to talk about, and there is quite a few things that we need to discuss. And we'll start today's show with a signing for the women's team. I mentioned that Arsenal had completed their first signing of January, and it is for the women's side, as Smilla Holmberg has arrived. A 19-year-old right back from Hammarby joins Renee Slegers' group ahead of the second half of the season, in which, of course, Arsenal remain very much in cup competitions, but the WSL seems to be slipping away somewhat already. But it would be nice, of course, to see a resurgence in the second half of the season, and to kind of match the potential outcome of the men's team as well, which could be a Premier League title. A WSL title looks a little bit unlikely, but who knows? Maybe with the injection of quality into the side in this January window, it's hopefully going to be something that propels us forwards. Moving into the men's team, and Arsenal will, of course, play Portsmouth this weekend. And this weekend, Arsenal were expected to play in their white kit, because Arsenal have played in their white kit in the third round of the FA Cup for the last 3 seasons. However, both Amy Lawrence and James McNicholas breaking the story yesterday that for the first time in a number of years, Arsenal will not play in their white kit for the first entrance of them into the FA Cup for the third round. And they're expected to play in red and white when they travel to Portsmouth on Sunday. The decision has been made. Of course, Arsenal's record in this kit is pretty bad. We've lost quite a fair few games in this kit. The Nottingham Forest game will haunt me forever. Since the 21-22 season, the 22-23 season, Arsenal managed to turn that record around by beating Oxford. But outside of that, we've continued to lose. We've lost against Liverpool wearing this kit. And then last season, we lost against Manchester United in a horrendous game. I think one of the worst games I've ever witnessed as an Arsenal fan. that Manchester United game last season where we missed a penalty. Havertz missed a few sitters, and then we lost on penalties, and Havertz missed a penalty in that shootout as well. But a decision has been taken to not wear that kit. However, it doesn't mean that is an end to the No More Red campaign and the support of the No More Red initiative, which of course is set to tackle knife crime and to try and bring attention to it, and of course help the victims and the families of those that have suffered as a result of those crimes. Arsenal still are continuing to support that cause, so it's not an end to that cause, but you can read the full story courtesy of James and Amy in The Athletic. Sticking with the FA Cup, and Portsmouth's game last weekend was postponed. They were supposed to play Ipswich in the afternoon. However, at 11 o'clock, the decision was taken for the game to be postponed because of the sub-zero temperatures that Fratton Park had experienced, and the match was abandoned because of a frozen pitch. Now, of course, Arsenal go to Fratton Park on Sunday, hoping to play their match in the FA Cup against Portsmouth. However, if Arsenal were to suffer the same fate as Ipswich and have the game abandoned due to, again, these really cold temperatures that the UK is currently experiencing, it would create a bit of a fixture nightmare. Arsenal have midweek games all the way up until the fourth round of the FA Cup. There is a midweek game in the League Cup with the semi-finals to be played against Chelsea. There is a Champions League game. There is a Premier League game, of course, this week against Liverpool. And that trend of midweek games is going on all the way through until the fourth round. So if this game was to be postponed for whatever reason, be that a pitch freeze or whatever reason, to rearrange this game would be really, really challenging. However, the weather forecast is certainly on Arsenal and Portsmouth sides, it seems, because the weather is set to improve over the next few days. It's been as low as -2 in Portsmouth, but that is due to rise to around 9 degrees by Sunday. So the hope is that with that increase in temperature, that there will not be a repeat of what happened against Ipswich for Portsmouth last weekend. So those that are planning to make the trip down to the South Coast and were somewhat concerned, frustrated, worried about those conditions, I think that hopefully, fingers crossed, based upon what the forecast is showing at the moment, it should be okay. But don't tell me I don't bring you some eclectic news on this show. And staying in the world of transfers, of course, Arsenal have completed their first signing in the women's team, as we've just discussed. But is Igor Tyjon going to be the first January signing on the men's side? Of course, the Blackburn forward has been a player that's been of interest to Arsenal for quite some time, and there's been multiple reports this January. Most recently, Simon Collins of The Sun reporting that Arsenal's interest has persisted through until this January window, and that we may indeed see a potential signing of the young striker, 17-year-old. Suggestions of a very small fee because he's only got 6 months left on his deal. He's rejected a professional contract with Blackburn, and Arsenal do want to add a centre forward to their youth academy. So will we see a kind of recruitment drive for the youth team this January, even though we're not really expecting a senior recruitment drive because that happened in the summer? Maybe we'll see some more young signings made, and will Tyjon be that potential addition? We will wait and see. The big news of yesterday, outside of Arsenal and more in terms of football in general, Ruben Amorim was sacked as Manchester United head coach. Now, yesterday evening, if you missed the evening show, I kind of uploaded it as a bit of a surprise episode. So if you missed it, I don't blame you because I didn't really make a big furore around it. It was kind of, sometimes I like to just drop shows now and again, those that are really kind of keeping their notifications turned on. And those of you that are subscribed to the channel and see it pop up in your feed will get a little present out of nowhere, and a show will be dropped. And so that's why you need to be subscribed to the channel. That's why you need to have those notifications turned on so you know when those shows drop. And I was very happy to be joined by a friend of the show and Sky Sports news reporter and presenter, Dharmesh Sheth, who, of course, has covered Arsenal plenty this season and in previous seasons and knows his stuff when it comes to transfers and, of course, more broadly around the Premier League. And we talked at length about Amorim and the sacking of Amorim, and also Enzo Maresca's sacking, and of course what that might mean for the broader context of the league, but also this idea of the difference between head coaches and managers, because of course at Arsenal have a very different structure of a club to Manchester United or Chelsea, where when we appoint a head coach, there is the potential, the scope for that head coach to become a manager. And Mikel Arteta, of course, joined as head coach in December of 2019. As a result of his success in his first season in winning the FA Cup, the club decided to make him manager. And a manager has a lot more control. They have influence over decisions that are made at the club. And we talked about at length and whether the structures that the likes of Chelsea or Manchester United just simply don't work. And, we've heard these stories that clubs have wanted to keep time and keep patient with coaches because they look at Mikel Arteta and the success of Arteta, considering the amount of time that he was given at Arsenal to then get his feet under the table properly, bring in the players that he obviously wanted for his squad. And as a result, we've seen Arsenal rise up the table from a team that have been nowhere, now being a consistent Premier League title challenger and into the latter stages of the Champions League as well. But the problem with that is that these clubs have very different structures. Arsenal, sorry, my voice is eluding me this morning. These clubs have very different structures to Arsenal. And while we have a manager that has influence all through the club, these clubs don't have that. And the head coach is there effectively just to coach. That's their job. That's what they need to do. So it's highly unlikely that they'll ever see success in the same mold that Arsenal will do with their manager because they don't plan on having a manager. But we'll get some of your thoughts on that in part 2 of today's show. So make sure that you are leaving your questions and thoughts about the sacking of Amorim down below. But do not hesitate, as you might hesitate to wonder why a club might sack their manager, to get involved with a fantastic service that, of course, is NordVPN. And I'm going to use NordVPN to try and clear my throat somewhat this morning as well. Hopefully that's worked. Because NordVPN is the only service out there that will give you the safety and security that you need while you're surfing the net online. You can listen to your favorites while you're abroad, of course, in any of the territories supported by the service on your tablet, your mobile, indeed your mobile device. And, of course, maybe your laptop. But if you can get a 30-day money-back guarantee on top of that as well and you're happy with the service, then please make sure that you do, because it's just a no-brainer when it comes to this. So you can shield your data from snoopers and criminals on a public Wi-Fi service. Stay safe. Shield your IP address. Make sure you stay protected. NordVPN.com/Gooner. Do not hesitate. Right, I think the voice has recovered. Let's go to part 2, your questions and more, right after this. Yes, indeed. This is part 2 of today's show. We'll be jumping into the chat box, tackling some of your questions. So if you've indeed got any questions you'd like to ask, now is the time to throw them into the chat box, and we'll go through as many of them as we feasibly can over the course of the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. Byron says, Pie Club has success when we are run by coaches and managers that care about the club. Examples like Herbert Chapman, George Graham, Arsene Wenger, and now Mikel Arteta. And I do think that the head coach, manager dynamic is something that, clubs do need to consider. If you think about the squads at Chelsea and the squad at Manchester United, it's like a mishmash of chaos, different managers, different head coaches, different regimes. It's a very weird environment, and the coach's job is just to coach. Liam Rosenior coming in at Chelsea, we expect an announcement on that. It's just very strange, isn't it? I'm very glad that Arsenal haven't got that head coach structure and instead have got a manager who has more power, more influence at the club. So very happy that we aren't in that kind of structure that Manchester United and Chelsea have. Political Jungle says, I think the head coach model is mental. I know it has worked in other places, but personally, I think the manager needs more influence on club affairs. We wouldn't have the dog we have now without Arteta, would we? 6 says, Arteta earned his right to have transfer input. Amorim deserved sacking plenty of times before Monday. It's difficult, isn't it? Because obviously Arteta was given influence pretty early on, whereas Amorim just wasn't, and players were signed and he had to deal with those signings. I think Amorim is a good coach. I just think he was in the wrong club. Is kind of how I see that one. I was a little concerned when Amorim was being linked to the job, and he was being linked to the Liverpool job actually. As I think he would have done better at Liverpool, significantly so. Maybe he wouldn't have won the league in his first season, but I think he certainly would have done a lot more than what he's been able to achieve with Manchester United. Rev says I think the sacking of Amorim was unfair. Although he wasn't great, it was his first year and his team is now 3 points off the top four. It seems to be more to do with his challenge of the club than where he is. And I think that's probably fair. He did that press conference where he effectively said that there are people influencing his role and he is unable to effectively do what he wanted to do because of what is going on above him. And yeah, there you go. Snake says, what did Arteta actually do? He actually ended the white kit. Genuinely, there's part of me that's still a little bit stunned, hence why I'm wearing my white hoodie today. I'm stunned that Arteta actually did it. I mean, I'm making an assumption here that Arteta, of course, was involved in the decision, of course, not to wear the red kit, but Arteta is involved in every single decision that we see at the club. So to think that he's not involved in any way, shape, or form, I think would be naive and a little bit ignorant. But the fact that we are not wearing this white kit anymore, I think will come as a relief to some. Look, the project, the messaging, the plan, the No More Red campaign is really important, and the club are still supporting that. But I do think that we do put ourselves at something of a disadvantage, it seems. There's something about this kit that weighs heavy on this team that they can't achieve what they wanted, that we've had such a bad record. And superstitions are big in football. They're really big in football. So the fact that Arteta has actually taken this decision or has been part of this decision to change the kit, I think, that's a positive thing that they've come to that decision to change things. Carl says, hopefully Darren Fletcher gets the new manager bounce. Need them firing on the 17th when United host City. Yeah, we'll wait and see. Of course, we do play United this month as well. So, yeah, swings and roundabouts. Martin says, you end up with a coach who might not rate half of the players that he, of course, has been given. Well, I guess that's any case when they join a club. But it's when those players are signed that it's when they start going, well, why have you signed this guy? I didn't want this guy. But yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. Forever Gunner says, Arteta is a manager. He joined as head coach, but he was promoted to manager after just 6-7 months in charge. John says, Amorim and Maresca have gone due to the board picking players, interfering with the squad management. West Ham are buying two new strikers, not by Nuno. As we hear, Nuno could be sacked after tonight. Board expecting miracles. I think if they sack Nuno, they're absolutely mad. Nuno is a very good manager, very good coach, and he's done good things with Wolves and, of course, with Nottingham Forest. They would be mad to let Nuno go. The problem is with the recruitment. The problem is with the squad, not with the coach at West Ham. Derek says, hi, mate. City dropping another 100+ million this January. How is this allowed? Scandalous. I really dislike Pep. If they're working within the confines of the structures that are at play, then they are entitled to do so. But, we're still awaiting an outcome of the 115 alleged financial breaches. So let's wait and see what happens there. Safa Cheech says, how ridiculous is Rio's statement saying Arteta would want to go to United? It's ridiculous. Yeah, I think we all know it's ridiculous. I mean, talk about living in a bubble. Someone should, I'm not going to ask Arteta about that, but someone should just do it so he can just be like, laugh at the question, I think, more than anything else. So Nicholas says, Arteta also fully understands and embraces the responsibility of being made manager. He always speaks about his position with such respect. It may sound corny, but I really appreciate that about him. Super says, I just hope Raiola doesn't go United. They will probably ruin him. That is the thing, is it seems to be something of a poisoned chalice, doesn't it? This job, this Manchester United job, it does seem to be. You go there, and you just what happens to you is not particularly good. So yeah, I'm never that concerned. Whoever goes there, it really doesn't concern me in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, I'm not too concerned about who might go there. Edu's, of course, could be leaving Forest, as Thomas points out as well. Yeah, it's really just not gone very well for Edu at Forest, has it? Mike says, is there a vacancy for official TGT weather forecaster? It's an area of expertise for me. I've also applied for the TGT kit/merch obsessive role. Mike, if anything becomes available, I'll be sure to let you know. But at the moment, we're kind of a one-man job. So we're a one-man band so far, but thank you for the offer. But weather forecasting isn't, I mean, from my own geography background, you'd think I'll be able to cover it, but so far it's only come up just the once, it seems. Carl says, Ornstein just tweeted in his roundup that there's no guarantee Mark Guehi joins Man City, even if the pursuit intensifies. Of course, Sammy Motbell reporting yesterday that they are accelerating their plans to try and sign Mark Guehi as a result of Josko Gvardiol seemingly out for the majority of the remainder, if not all of the season that is left because of a broken leg. Another broken leg to another big player, Alexander Isak, of course, the first, now Josko Gvardiol as well. Bad fortune for them, but it makes sense they would then go for Mark Guehi, but it may be that he is waiting for Liverpool still. It may be that he's waiting to the end of the season, maybe as well, and that he wants to stay with Palace now at the end of the season and get a big payoff in the summer. Tyson says, did you hear that Edu could be gone from Forest due to the downfall since his falling out with Nuno? I've got to say, I've loved Edu, but the change was the best thing that we've done in years. Yeah, it does seem to, it's just not worked out there. He's done a lot of good for Arsenal. There can be no question about that. Edu did a lot of good, and the squad that we have now is a massive, massive reason of why we've got the squad we have now is because of Edu. You know, some of the signings that we've made, some of the deals that we've done is a big, big thanks to him. But he wasn't perfect. There wasn't always the best decisions made. And I think, you know, we are better for moving on now. Byron says, this is the reason I can't respect Pep. He just buys the best players in every position whenever the manager has. Pep bought a player for under 50 million. I can't remember. I think those of you, and I personally don't agree with you on this front. Pep Guardiola is the greatest manager, in my opinion, of my generation. Loads of managers spend big money on players. Doesn't mean that you necessarily get success. You have to get the best from those players still. You look at the success he had with the Barcelona youth team before he took that job at Barcelona. Arguably, Bayern Munich were the best they've ever been under him, even though he didn't manage to win the Champions League with them. I'm sorry, but those of you that just don't rate Pep Guardiola, I think it's just salty. It's just salty. For me, he is an unbelievable coach, an absolutely unbelievable machine of a manager. Mark says, Tom, do you remember when Man United under Ferguson changed their grey kit at half-time? I think it was against Blackburn. Sir Alex Ferguson said it's because the players couldn't see each other. Yeah, and there is something to that. That said, our third kit is white, but it does have the burgundy shorts, so I guess that does help. But I think it was up to Arteta who would wear the lightning bolt blue kit if we couldn't wear the red kit. So yeah, we'll see if that changes. The white kit is beautiful, but Arsenal in white is always a little contentious, isn't it? But I'm never a big fan of saying don't wear white because of that, you know. But I get what people say. But for me, the best kit we've ever worn is that black away kit from 22-23. But what could have been that season. Annie says, I think there is very little chance any decision will be made public during the season as it would lessen the title race, and that's not in the Premier League's interests. It's not necessarily in the Premier League's hands. It's more in the courts now. So, again, we'll wait and see what happens on that front. Late Bloomer says, do you think Arteta was given more time at the beginning of his tenure because it was his first job, unlike Maresca and Ruben? No, I think it's because he earned early credit with that FA Cup victory more than anything else. And you could see that there was a mess. You know, he inherited a mess at Arsenal. Unai Emery had destroyed the dressing room come the end of his tenure. The squad that had been built as well was just not very well built. And there was real problems around that squad. And I think the club knew, the owners knew the reality of that situation. And Arteta inherited that and had to turn it around. And also the pandemic, I think, also influenced the time that Arteta was given, because that also affected things. People don't like to talk about the pandemic because they're like, it was the same for everyone. But it wasn't. The pandemic affected different clubs differently based upon how ready they were for it. And Arsenal were in the worst situation they could have possibly been when the pandemic hit as a club going through this transition. So, yeah, I think a lot of factors. I don't think it's to do with the other managers or their time. I think it's to do with what the reality was at Arsenal, and not necessarily because of, what other man or the lack of experience that Arteta had. Barry says, I hate saying it, but I think Ferguson was the best all-round manager, but Pep is definitely right up there alongside Nigel Clough. Mikey says, Berta and Heinz have injected more intellect, experience, and emotional intelligence into our team and organisation. Success this season is inevitable, in my opinion. I hope that you're right, Mikey. I truly do. Cal says, in addition to the FA Cup win, Mikel had a clear vision and a guidance for the club. Yeah, I mean, I think they bought into Arteta's vision of what he saw, and he delivered by continuing to progress Arsenal, to get them further, to take them further. Despite not having the resources that he needed at those times, he continued to progress things. And we have only taken further steps forward on this journey to hopefully becoming Premier League champions. And Ash says, Tom, hearing news on Instagram that Vinicius Jr. could potentially join Arsenal in this window. Well, I mean, That's not true. So don't expect that to happen, nor would I want Vinicius Jr. at Arsenal. Blee says Arteta had a plan and his squad always had character and, of course, a style. I remember the early days where everyone was saying how they couldn't work out Arteta's style. They couldn't work out his style of play, his philosophy. It was a big talking point at the beginning of Arteta's tenure. We really didn't know what it was going to be. Now, of course, we do know of how defensively solid he aims to be, to build from the back, to be patient, to be dominant in the way in which his team plays. With still flair, with still some creativity, of course, and a hope for clinical finishing. But that is the element that has not yet quite clicked yet, and that could be the difference. Joe says, out of context, how would you describe your feelings when Arsenal win the league this season, Tom? When? You're tempting fate there, my friend. There's a long way to go. Only 6-point gap. That can change a lot. By this time last year, Liverpool had a 5-point... this time 2 seasons ago, Liverpool had a 5-point lead, and look what happened to them. So don't count your chickens before they've hatched. Of course, I would feel amazing, but I'm not counting my chickens before they've hatched quite yet. Long way to go. Political Junkie says, I find it weird that fans are quick to give credit to Berta and Heinze and minimise Arteta's impact. How do people know what Heinze has done? I think there's absolutely an element you can give of credit to those people. You know, I do think that, you know, Andrea Berta's arrival in the summer that we had, some people that are perhaps more critical of Arteta kind of used Berta as a little bit of a stick to kind of say, look, we can get behind this guy because he's come in alongside Arteta. So there was definitely some narrative and agenda-driven stuff there, but everyone has pulled together. Arteta, Berta, the coaching staff, Richard Garlick, the overall hierarchy, to create what Arsenal have created ahead of this brand new season. And all of them are one. They are all one. You know, they are all one club, one project. One club is kind of something that the club really is pushing towards. Arteta in particular, it's kind of a philosophy, one club, both on the women's and the men's side being kind of one. You know, there's a whole one club philosophy at Arsenal. Spearmint says, what do chickens have to do with it? It's an analogy, mate. Come on. Let's get those brain cells turning, people. Thomas says, sorry, Tom, I'm late watching it live, though. Don't apologise, mate. Thank you for tuning in. Carl says, what are the chances that we get a new central midfielder? In January, I'd be highly, highly doubtful. But in the summer, there's a good chance that we could see that. Julian says, if we don't win it this year, I don't know when we will. Maybe next year. Mike says, let's not get it twisted. I'm Arteta in from day one. Blee says, what duties differ between a manager and a head coach? The head coach is just a coach. Like, they are in charge of coaching. So the duties don't differ. It's not about the duties differing. It's just the head coach is in charge of all coaching aspects, the on-pitch stuff, the team selection, even sometimes that can get influence. But a manager has all of what a head coach has, but then he has influence over decision-making off the pitch. So Arteta will be in charge of also, you know, kind of the aspects of recruitment. He'll be not in charge of it necessarily, but like he'll be highly influenceable in terms of the decision-making of transfers. Some stuff to do with the stadium, some stuff to do with infrastructure. The youth academy side of things, he'll have more of a hand in as well. He'll be working closely with Per Mertesacker to kind of oversee things there. Potential sponsorship. Like, he might be in discussions with the commercial officers like Juliette Slot about certain decisions that happen at that level of things. He'll have an influence in all of the decisions that happen at Arsenal. He will be consulted. He will be made aware of things. Whereas a head coach, often things go on at the club that they aren't ever kind of consulted about. So lots of different things. You think about Arteta with Win the Dog, with the trees in the stadium and in the training ground that are planted. You know, these sort of things that they are little, they're small little things, but they build up. So yeah, I think you can't underestimate the influence of what a manager has compared to the head coach. They are different roles. King says, I want to take this time to thank Marinakis. As good as Edu was, it was the right time to move on from him, and Berta has brought us to a new level. Political Junk says, I agree that Heinze wouldn't be there if Arteta didn't think he brought anything to the table. I just get frustrated by people trying to niggle Arteta by crediting Berta. That's what I was kind of alluding to earlier, and I absolutely empathise with you. You know, some people do try to kind of drive a wedge between the two and make it so that it's like Team Berta, Team Arteta. They are one. They are one thing. The Arteta signings, Berta signings. No signing is made without both of those people signing off on them. Even though Berta was like a driving force in the Gyökeres deal, for example, Arteta still had to sign off on that deal. That deal doesn't happen unless Arteta says, yes, let's do it. Let's go sign Gyökeres. So I don't want you to see people. And if you do see people going, Arteta didn't want Gyökeres. He wasn't the starting Arsenal. He wasn't the striker Arsenal wanted. Well, definitely his preference initially was Šeško. There's no doubt about that. But no signing happens without Arteta signing off on it. So there's no Berta signing. There's no Arteta signing. It's just not a thing. That was the case when Edu was at the club as well. No signing happened without Arteta's say so. So any signing that comes in is on Berta and Arteta. It's not one or the other. Definitely there's more influence in certain signings, but ultimately the decisions are made as a unified force, not as a separate thing. Manu says, morning, Tom. Loving the show on Spotify. Keep it up. Who is your all-time Belgian player for Arsenal? Is it Leo or is it Vermaelen? It's got to be Leo. It has to be Leo. I struggled. Vermaelen I liked for his exuberance and the way in which he could be a goal-scoring defender, but no, it's got to be Leo, 100%. Thomas says, Tom, I'm starting of thinking my own football podcast. How do I get listeners? The age-old question. How do you get listeners? How do you bring people in? How do you start a channel and then get people to watch it? The ultimate answer is there isn't really an answer. It's an organic thing. It's something that you have to do yourself. You have to catch people's attention. You have to find a way of doing it and keep it. In these day and age, clickbait is kind of a thing where if you don't, it's all well and good having a clickbaity headline or a thumbnail or something that will draw and be like, oh, that's clickable, I'll click that. But then to keep people interested, keep people watching, you've got to find a way of creating content that people want to listen to. And my advice is always just to be yourself. Don't play a character. Just say your actual opinions. Say what you think. Don't ever be swayed by outside influences as to what your opinion should be. And be consistent. But equally, I also say if you've got a mind, there's no point in having one if you can't change it. So don't feel like you have to be pressured into staying to one side of the coin on a certain topic because your listeners expect you to say only positive things or only critical things. That's not a healthy community if they're expecting one thing. I'd hate to be in a position where if you said one thing that happened to be slightly different to what you said maybe a month, 2 months, a year ago, that you'd be lambasted for it, because that's not what people come to listen for. That's not what you're about. But it's hard. I remember when I took over the channel, I was in a very different situation. Now, we have started channels from scratch. We did it with the Arsenal way, over on Football London, and we went from 0 subscribers to 100 and whatever thousand it is now. And now, of course, me and John are carrying that on with the Seeing Red podcast on that channel. 133,000 subs there. So it's mad to think you can go from 0 to that. But I took over this channel when it was on about 6,000 subs, and that's a different environment because Craig, who was the host, I'm not Craig. I never was Craig. I was my own person. So people were tuning into TGT, seeing Craig, and then Craig didn't want to do it anymore, for his own reasons. And I wasn't going to just be B-Tech Craig, just be Craig Mark II. And I had to be myself, and if people wanted to stick around for me, great. If they didn't want to listen anymore because I wasn't Craig, great. You have to go and choose your own pathways. You have to go and choose your own thing. You can only do your own thing. So yeah, it's hard. It's very, very difficult. But especially now, when I started doing it in 2016, there was a lot less Arsenal podcasts out there. 2025, I mean, a friend of mine runs a pod called Not Another Arsenal Podcast. Shout out to Mike and the group. That's the reality. It's very congested. Very, 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 very congested. So, yeah. Soup says, have you heard from Craig? I mean, now and again, we have a little conversations now on social media. He's gone to focus on family. He's gone to focus on his work, and it was great when I did catch up with him last year, talking about kind of what he's been up to. But it's life just kind of moves on, doesn't it? And Craig started the Same Old Arsenal podcast and then moved on from that. So people just move on to their own things, do their own things. And I always say, whenever I talk about the channel, if I ever go on anyone else's or, I'm invited onto another pod to talk about how kind of this journey began, I always make sure I credit Craig, because without Craig, there's no career for me. Without Craig, I never would have the career I have now. So I'm always very, very thankful. Chris says, did you have to pay a fee to Craig? No. Craig was very much, when we had the conversation, that he said he didn't want the channel to die at the time. He wanted to focus on family and himself, but he didn't want the channel to die. So he was like, if you would like to carry it on, because I was a regular guest with him at the time, when I was like, I was 21, 22. And he said, if you want to carry it on, feel free to take it on. So that's what happened. Extremely generous, extremely humbling, and I think we were on about 6,000-7,000 subscribers back then, and kind of it was very different kind of setup. But things moved. Nottingham Trent Uni, yes, Benny, indeed, that's where I was. That's where I was. What did you end up doing? I think we ended up doing like a Sunday podcast. I think we started out. We had like a Sunday podcast with a variety of rotating guests, some who you sometimes still see now, some who I don't speak to anymore. And it was kind of like a rotating, kind of a rotating thing. And then I started the transfer breakdown shows that I used to do, where it was kind of the summer of, what was it? What year would it have been? I think it was like 2022. In fact, I can probably check what year it was we did the first ever transfer breakdown show. They took a lot of time. Like, I obviously I was a teacher back then, so I'd come home from teaching and I'd spend my evening obviously finishing off any work that I had, and then I'd make like a transfer breakdown video. Transfer breakdowns, the first ever transfer breakdown on the channel. That's annoying. I don't have the I didn't save all the originals into a playlist, so I don't actually have them. Oh, to be fair, it might be an old playlist on the channel. Let's see if we can find it. Playlists, old playlist. Tactical Breakdown 2022. I think I did it before that. I think there's some before that. Oh, here we go. Tactical Breakdown. So that's 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Crazy. There's someone like Thomas Partey and Pereira. There's someone, Smith Rowe. We interviewed the former Huddersfield Town head of football operations about Smith Rowe when he was there on loan and who signed him. Graham Hunter came on a couple of times to talk about Spanish football. We talked about one about Tim Lewis and Raul Sanyehi's departure as well. There's some really old shows that we used to do. And then after that, we started the 8 a.m. show. And that kind of was the big kickoff. Like the transfer breakdown show grew the channel to like, I think 30 or 40,000 subscribers. And then we started doing the daily 8 a.m. shows. And that's just, I think we've done over I think we're on episode 654 of this, and we're on episode 800 of the new show. So yeah, there's like over 1,500 odd 8 a.m. shows now. So we've been doing this for easily nearly 4 or 5 years. Yonka says, have you ever had a former student? Or no, because that would be such a breach of child protection laws. So no, obviously not. Let's go. Vacan says, Craig built the channel, Tom turned the lights on. It's that famous quote, isn't it? Arsene Wenger built the Emirates, Arteta turned the lights on. As I say, I always credit Craig. Can I get Craig on? Yeah, of course. I'd happily get Craig on. Craig's always welcome back here. I mean, the thing is, me and Craig don't align on a lot of our opinions. Sometimes we will disagree about Arsenal all the time. That's what part of made the show when we first did it good, because we didn't see eye to eye on a number of topics. So it wasn't just like an echo chamber. We weren't always agreeing, and that's persisted. I don't always agree with Craig's points of views, and he doesn't always agree with mine. But that's football. That's opinions. That's what it's about. Beaker says, Tom, is there a character you need to be made a manager compared to a coach? For example, Klopp and Arteta. Is there a character you need to be made a manager compared to a coach? For example, Klopp, Arteta, Pep have the deeper connections with their teams. I think it grows, doesn't it? Like, it just grows. It's experience as well for the likes of Pep and Klopp, but for Arteta, it grew. Let me message. Let me see if I can message Craig, and we'll see if we can get him on. We'll try and get Craig on the channel. So if he's up for it, he might not be up for it. You never know. He might not want to do it. We'll see if we can get Craig on. And Ash says, I don't hate Gyökeres, but he is not delivering as we all expected. Instead of Gabriel Jesus looking more dangerous in the box. I don't think anyone should hate Gyökeres at all. No one should hate Gyökeres. You know, I think if the idea that a player should be given time is important, I also think that there is an element of expectation that has to be met, obviously, but at the same time, you have to be understanding that it's a new league. It's a new team, and it needs time. I think we need to change the way in which we talk about Gyökeres a bit, but we have done that topic to death. Mike says James B did a good video on Gyökeres, so maybe check it out. I will. I'll make sure I watch it. Dan says, morning, Tom. I think the preview shows did a lot of good when the channel was growing as well. It was good fun for us listeners pre-game. Yeah, I know, and it's just a time thing for me. Like I used to do a show every morning and then one every evening, and there'd be a different show based on what evening it was. And I had the time to do that. Also, there became a point where, like, getting people to do the preview show, we used to get 3 people doing preview shows all the time. But again, people grow up, people's lives take over. They can't be on the show. They can't do it. So yeah, look, it's been hard to do evening shows all the time of work. And then also I've grown to focus more on family as well. Like, it's really important to focus on family too, and not to miss out on that time, because, you know, as much time I can spend with the missus in the evenings and with friends and doing things I also enjoy is also really important, whereas I wasn't doing that when I was growing the channel as much as I was before, you know. And I'm just kind of happy with the structure that we are at this point in time. Ryan says people need to start thinking Jesus is the answer for our centre forwards. He was appalling. He went 19 games without scoring. To be fair, in those 19 games, he did some really good things as well. So again, it's not important not to look at things in a binary way like that. John says, I love a good atmosphere at the Emirates, but I do believe the stewards are being overzealous with the Ashburton Army continually in their chat and stopping them when I attend games. Look, I have my opinions about the AA. You know that. I do think there is a rebrand that's needed, but equally, I do think that there are some overzealous elements to the stewarding in certain parts of the stadium. Like, if you're in the back row of a stadium and you're being told to sit down, I mean, come on. But it's why safe standing needs to be introduced as much as feasibly possible, and that seems to be the case for the future. So I don't think it's any surprise that it sounds like it's happening in the clock end as well, before anywhere else, where the Ashburton Army obviously sit. I don't think there's any surprise it's happening, it seems anyway, there before the North Bank. Any more questions before we wrap things up? Terence says, with the results this week, does it feel more like things are going our way? These past results used to go in for City's or Liverpool's. Now we're getting the benefits of our rivals' downfall. I think that there was the expectation that City were just kind of this ominous machine that were just going to catch us. They had to be perfect, because that's the thing about opening a gap up, is your opponents have to be perfect. And if you're perfect to as much as you can do, they too have got to match that. And that's very hard. I mean, some people say they like chasing, but I prefer to lead myself. I'd rather be in the lead than being the ones that have to chase and hope that others slip up. I'd rather our destiny is in our own hands. Carl says, any news on Havertz and how close he is to a return? Was on the bench for Villa and then not Bournemouth, was maybe not so close. It's just loads. Like, we talked about this the other day. Like, he's working extremely hard. He could have potentially come off the bench against Villa, was my understanding. But then, you know, he's worked very hard. And sometimes when you work extremely hard to come back, you have to manage the load and the minutes. Declan Rice came back as well, which meant that space in the squad had to be taken up by somebody else. And as a result, it was just thought that Havertz was better off being replaced by Declan Rice in the squad. Lachlan says, "Hey Tom, best hotels to stay when I fly over." Honestly, mate, I'm not. My info on hotels in the area is not great, so sorry I can't be of more help there. But if you are coming over for a potential parade, then yeah, that's. I hope it happens for all of us. Nathan says, "Morning, Tom, and family from the central US. First time live in a few months. The newborn timed a late night wake up perfectly." Well, I hope things are going well for you, Nathan. Daniel says, "I get asked about Arsenal's 5 youngest players to play in the Premier League, and I failed massively. Do you reckon that you could get them all?" Arsenal's 5 youngest ever players to play in the Premier League. Ethan Nwaneri, Max Dowman, Cesc Fabregas, and then we are struggling. I don't think Jack Wilshere is one of them. I don't think Jack Wilshere is one of them. I don't know if Theo Walcott maybe is one of them. 5 youngest in the Premier League. Those 3 are definitely right. It's Fabregas, Dowman, Nwaneri. Bellerin? Is Bellerin potentially one? Might be Hector Bellerin. I'm trying to keep my hands on show so you know I'm not Googling. And I'm not scrolling either, so you don't give me any hints. So I'm going to go Bellerin. Szczesny? Is Szczesny one? Maybe that's a bit wild of a claim, but he did make his debut really young. I'm going to go Szczesny, Bellerin, Fabregas, Dowman, Nwaneri. There might be more recent ones that I'm not thinking of. Maybe even Miles Lewis-Skelly was one of them, but I don't know. Yeah, people are saying Charlie Patino. Did he make a Premier League? Did Patino make a Premier League appearance? No, he didn't make a Premier League appearance, Patino. So it wasn't him. Oh, Gnabry and Wilshere. Gnabry's a great shot. And Wilshere was one. Marley Salmon's not made a Premier League experience. Saka, I think, was a little later. Apparently, it's Cesc, Dowman, Nwaneri, Wilshere, and Gnabry. Apparently, they're the 5. Definitely Steiner. Yeah, maybe in the other direction, but not that way. Okay, so apparently they're the 5. Wilshere. That seems mad to me. Wilshere, Cesc, Dowman, Nwaneri, and Gnabry. The 5 oldest, I mean, that's a great question. The 5 oldest is harder. Yeah, that could be a lot of players. Sol Campbell must have been one of them because he rejoined the club when he was really old. Surely Sol Campbell was one. He joined Arsenal again in 2010 when he was 35. Oh, maybe it wasn't as... I think we've had older than 35. Petr Cech. Is he one of the 5 oldest? I'm going to have to use ChatGPT, aren't I? Who are the 5 oldest players? Who are... and this could be wrong, to be fair, because AI is not always correct. Who are the 5 players who were of the oldest age when they made their final? Because you have to do it differently when you debut it this way for Arsenal. Okay, let's see if we can get an answer to this. It could be back in like the 1930s, 40s, 50s. You never know. Jens Lehmann, of course. Jens Lehmann, 41 years, 5 months, 0 days. So no surprises there. No surprises. And I'm seeing if anyone's... Yeah, Paul says Jens Lehmann, absolutely. So you're saying Jens Lehmann definitely had to be one. Jack Rutherford, 41 years, 3 months, 10 days. 1926. I told you we might be going back quite a long way. I thought there might be one. So Jack or Jock Rutherford, 41 years of age, 3 months, 10 days. Arsenal's oldest first-team player in club history. Played his last match on the 20th of March, 1926. So was only beaten by Jens Lehmann. John Lukic, 39 years, 11 months, 0 days. The longest-serving goalkeeper. Made his last appearance just shy of his 40th birthday. Pat Jennings. No surprise these are goalkeepers, is it? These are mainly goalkeepers. Pat Jennings, 39 years, 8 months, 25 days. I've seen the Pat Jennings statue in Newry in Northern Ireland when I went for a friend's wedding, who's a friend of the channel, Owen. And then Joe Mercer, midfielder, inside forward, 39 years, 8 months, 1 days. Also featured late into his 30s before retiring for Arsenal. So, yeah, I mean, names on that list. Joe Mercer played for Arsenal in 1946 to 1955. There you go. So they're the top 5. Petr Cech wasn't on it, amazingly. I don't know, maybe he was in his 37 or so, 36, 37. It was very late when he obviously retired. But yeah, you have to be in your 39 at least to get into that list. So crazy, really. Anyway, a little bit of trivia for you this morning. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. Have an absolutely fantastic rest of your Tuesday. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic start to your week. If you haven't done so already, of course, Premier League action is getting underway in these days now. We've got West Ham against Nottingham Forest tonight. That's the first action today. And then tomorrow we've got Palace against Villa, Fulham against Chelsea, Brentford against Sunderland, Bournemouth against Spurs, Man City against Brighton, Everton against Wolves, and Burnley against Man United, with Newcastle against Leeds. And then on Thursday, it's Arsenal against Liverpool. So we've got all that to look forward to, but a big game in the relegation battle tonight to look out for as well and to watch. But yeah, have an absolutely brilliant rest of your day. And I'll see you again tomorrow morning. Go catch up on yesterday evening's pod with Dharmesh. You can go listen to the latest episode of Seeing Red with myself and John Cross over on the Seeing Red Arsenal channel as well. So go and check that out. But yeah, speak to you soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.